Spanish 3 Honors. Today I am out, but I still have a review for you so you can begin studying for your chapter exam. The first place it's really good to go is page 56. This is a quick review of your grammar that's going to appear on your exam. For example, the subjunctive with your impersonal expressions, which can be found on page 40, including phrases such as es importante que, es necesario que, es probable que. These set up the need for subjunctive because there's an unknown outcome. And the es is a subject that stands alone, so anything that comes after the que is considered a switch in subject. Also, with phrases like ojalá, God willing, quizás and tal vez, perhaps or maybe. Again, setting up the need for subjunctive because of an unknown outcome. These can be found on page 42. Let's review how we form our subjunctive. The first thing you do is you put the verb in the yo form. You take off the o and you switch the endings. So if it's an AR verb, your new ending is E, ES, E, EMOS, and EN. ER and IR verbs have the opposite, A, AS, A, AMOS, and AN. Verbs that we have to be careful of are our 5 irregulars, those that do not end in an O in the yo form, including dar, estar, ser, ir, and saber. These can all be found in your notes. Additionally, being careful with verbs that end in GAR, ZAR, and CAR. They make spelling changes to the end that carry throughout. GAR becomes GUE, ZAR becomes CE, and CAR becomes QUE. Okay. So the next thing that we covered in this chapter were how to deal with stem changers in the subjunctive. And this can be found on page 43 or in the notes and the handout that I gave you on this. If a verb ends in an AR or if it ends in an ER, then it will stem change in the boot. Notice that stem change occurs only in the boot. But if a verb ends in IR, it will stem change in the boot and outside of the boot. The difference is that in the boot, it will make the same change that it would in the present tense, and outside of the boot, it makes the same change it would in the preterite tense. Let me show you an example of what I mean here. So in a verb like jugar, jugar is a stem changer. It's U to UE. So since it's an AR verb, in the subjunctive, it will only stem change inside the boot. But be careful because it's also a verb that ends in GAR. So you're going to need the stem change and you're going to need the unusual ending. Juegue, I play in the subjunctive. You play, juegues. He or she plays, juegue. But once we step outside of the boot, there is no stem change, again, because it ends in AR. Juguemos. Then back into the they form, jueguen. Now, if we look at a verb like dormir, to sleep, it is a stem changer, but it's an IR verb. So the first thing we have to consider is what kind of a stem changer is it in the present tense? It's an O to UE. What kind of stem changer is it in the preterite? It's an O to U. So reading this in the subjunctive tells me that in the boot, the O becomes UE, and outside of the boot, the O becomes just a U. Let's take a look. We would be looking at duerma, switched ending, duermas, duerma. Then outside of the boot, since it's an IR verb, we're going to need the preterite stem change. Dormamos. And then finally they form duerman. Okay. And these can all be found on page 43 of the text. Finally, the last thing we covered grammatically is the comparisons of equality, found on page 44. You have two choices. You have tanto and you have tan. Now, tanto has to match in the gender and number. So it could be tanto, it could be tanta, it could be tantos, and it can be tantas. Okay? And this is what we use to compare a quality when what's being compared is a quantity of something. Okay? I have as many of something as someone else. If I'm comparing myself using an adjective or an adverb, I run as quickly, I am as smart, we use than. And these are both followed with the word como. Como will come after your comparison. Okay? We're going to do some practices with that. Go ahead and refer back to your progress book to let you know which activities I expect you to complete today.